From being criminally charged with assault to losing the tip of your finger, the NHL has seen some scary injuries throughout the years. Hockey players are known to be a whole other breed of athlete who are willing to put their body on the line, and there is plenty evidence of that. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the worst injury for all 32 NHL teams. The Anaheim Ducks, Paul Kariya. Now, I will say this is not an injury that lasts very long. However, in the moment, you could not help but think Paul Kariya's career was over. In Game 6 of the 2003 Stanley Cup Final, New Jersey's Scott Stevens delivered a devastating hit to Anaheim's Paul Kariya. Stevens hit Kariya square in the jaw and knocked him out cold. Paul Kariya suffered a concussion on the play and was laying on the ice for several moments after the hit. No penalty was called on the play. After spending several motionless minutes on the ice, Kariya stood up but was unable to leave on his own. As he was helped off the ice by teammates and trainers, there wasn't a person in the building that thought he'd return to the game, let alone the series. But then the unthinkable happened and Kariya shockingly returned to the bench that same period. Making this even more miraculous, Kariya sped down the wing and fired off an amazing shot, putting the Ducks up 4-1, bringing that entire stadium to its feet. The Arizona Coyotes, Clayton Keller. Arizona Coyotes star Clayton Keller was forced out of the rest of the season after being taken off the ice in a stretcher during a game against the San Jose Sharks. Keller crashed legs first into the boards late in Arizona's 5-2 victory over the Sharks. The game was delayed about 10 minutes with 5 minutes and 15 seconds remaining after Keller went hard into the boards behind the San Jose net. He was down on the ice for about 5 minutes before being wheeled off and giving everyone a thumbs up as he left. Thankfully, Keller recovered in time for the following season and actually put up career-high numbers where he had 37 goals, 49 assists, and 86 points in the 2022-23 season. Enduring a substantial injury like this could have easily derailed his career. The Boston Bruins, Ted Green. It was only a preseason game, but the violence was real. Wayne Mackey of the St. Louis Blues and Boston's Ted Green got into a stick-swinging duel that ended with Green being struck in the head and falling to the ice. Green fractured his skull and suffered brain damage on this play. As a result, he missed the entire 1969-1970 season and had to wear a helmet when he returned to the ice the following season. Those who saw this incident said Mackey's attack was one of the most violent in league history. The Buffalo Sabres, Clint Malarchuk. During a game between the visiting St. Louis Blues and Malarchuk's Buffalo Sabres on March 22, 1989, Steve Tuttle of the Blues ended up crashing hard into the net, colliding into Malarchuk, and Tuttle's skate blade hit the right front side of Malarchuk's neck, severing his carotid artery. With blood gushing out of Malarchuk's neck onto the ice, he was actually able to leave the ice on his own feet with the assistance of his team's athletic trainer. Many spectators were physically sickened by this sight. The excessive amount of blood that Malarchuk had lost caused 11 fans to faint, 2 to have a heart attack, and 3 players to vomit on the ice. Malarchuk, meanwhile, believed he was going to die. He said, "All I wanted to do is get off the ice. My mother was watching the game on TV and I didn't want her to see me die." Malarchuk's life was saved due to quick action by the Sabres athletic trainer, who was a former U.S. Army combat medic who had served in Vietnam. He gripped Malarchuk's neck and pinched off the blood vessels, not letting go until doctors arrived to begin stabilizing the wound. The Calgary Flames, Chris Tanev. During a 5-on-3 penalty kill, Tanev attempted to block a shot from the Canadiens captain Nick Suzuki. The shot hit Tanev in the side of the head. He fell on the ice and the crowd went silent. Although the Canadiens still possessed the puck, they called for the referees to end the play so Tanev can get medical assistance. After the team medics examined Tanev, he skated off the ice with the help of his teammates. Calgary goalie Jacob Markstrom said, "Tanev's tough. He doesn't stay down very often, so when he stayed down, you're worried." Tanev was then taken to a local hospital where all tests were shown as negative and he was cleared to travel back to Calgary. The Carolina Hurricanes, Mark Howe. Now, this incident happened before the Hurricanes were the Hurricanes and Mark Howe was playing for the Hartford Whalers. In 1982, Mark Howe slid into the pointed metal center of the net and cut a 5-inch gash into his upper thigh. He was essentially impaled by the metal piece of the goal. The injury nearly ended his career and prompted the NHL to change the design of the net, so there would no longer be a center portion that just shot out toward the goal line. After this injury, the Whalers felt that Howe was damaged goods and would trade him to the Philadelphia Flyers, where he became a Norris Trophy winning defenseman. The Chicago Blackhawks, Connor Murphy. There was a very scary incident in March of 2022, one that saw Connor Murphy taken off the ice in a stretcher. Murphy was sent headfirst into the boards by a hit from behind, delivered by Ottawa Senators forward Parker Kelly. Murphy and Kelly were both chasing down the puck in the Blackhawks zone, and it appeared that Kelly was thinking hit the whole way as he glided towards Murphy along the boards. As Kelly went in to deliver the body check, however, Murphy turned his body at the last possible second and made himself considerably more vulnerable as the contact was made. The impact caused Murphy to go face first into the boards, and it was pretty clear from his body language that he was hurt right away. Murphy appeared to collapse in on himself, unable to support his own weight, and was immediately down in a heap on the ice as if he had been knocked out unconscious. Kelly received 5 minutes for boarding on the play and a game misconduct. Murphy was then diagnosed with a concussion, not returning back into the lineup until the following season. The Colorado Avalanche, Steve Moore. On March 8, 2004, after failing to get Moore into a fight, Todd Bertuzzi punched the Avalanche forward from behind in the head. Bertuzzi stayed on Moore and drove his face into the ice as they both fell. As this happened, 2 other players quickly piled on. When everything settled, Moore was lying motionless on the ice and had to be removed with a stretcher. He suffered 3 broken bones in his neck, a concussion, and facial lacerations. Steve Moore never played in the NHL again. Meanwhile, Bertuzzi didn't return to the NHL until the 2004-2005 lockout ended. The Columbus Blue Jackets, Nick Foligno. Left winger Nick Foligno was seriously injured back in October of 2014. He was hit by Jeff Carter in front of the Kings bench and then rammed into the elbow of the linesman on the ice. The linesman tried to jump out of the way, however, he could not avoid Foligno. Foligno was taken off the ice by a stretcher with 11 minutes and 34 seconds left in the third period. Foligno said, "It was probably the first time I was actually scared on the ice." After undergoing an MRI, Foligno learned that there was no structural damage to his spinal cord. On the play, Foligno said he immediately lost feeling in both limbs and the whole right side of his body. By the time he was on the stretcher, Foligno said he finally started to get some motion back into his limbs. In classic hockey player fashion, this is what Foligno had to say. "Once I started feeling my limbs come back again and everything was good, I wanted to get back out there." The Dallas Stars, Mike Modano. Back in December of 1997, Oilers D-man Bryant Marchment was suspended 3 games by the NHL for a hit that would keep Dallas's star player Mike Modano out for over a month, missing 10 games. Marchment was also fined a league maximum of $1,000 and was assessed a match penalty. Marchment was known as a dirty player, and his knee-on-knee hit on Mike Modano was definitely dirty. At the time of this hit, Mike Modano was the NHL's leading scorer with 15 goals and 23 assists. The result of this dirty play was a torn knee ligament. Later on in the playoffs that season, the two met again and Brian Marchment continued to live up to his reputation, throwing a straight elbow into the face of Modano. Luckily, Modano was not hurt on the play. However, Marchment did get the best of Joe Nieuwendyk in that series, resulting in Nieuwendyk tearing his ACL, and he needed 2 surgeries to repair the damage, missing the rest of the playoffs and the beginning of the following season. The Detroit Red Wings, Jiri Fischer. This may not be a hockey injury in the true sense of the word, but it happened to a hockey player during an NHL game, so it had to be included in this video. Red Wings defenseman Jiri Fischer actually went into cardiac arrest during a game against the Nashville Predators on November 21st, 2005. He had to be rushed to the hospital. Jiri Fischer survived, but his heart abnormalities essentially ended his hockey career. He went on to work for the Red Wings organization in scouting and player development. The Edmonton Oilers, Taylor Hall. In the 2011-2012 season, Edmonton Oilers winger Taylor Hall was cut in the face by a teammate's skate during pre-game warm-ups and ended up missing the game. Hall, who wasn't wearing a helmet or a visor, lost his balance after stepping on a puck and wiped out in the corner boards. On the way down, he took down a teammate with him, and the two of them slid into Corey Potter, who was standing in the corner as well. Potter stumbled, and his skate came down somewhere on Hall's exposed face. Luckily, a plastic surgeon was on hand at the rink in Columbus, saving Hall a trip to the hospital. Hall said, "Even though I tried to get back in the lineup that night, when I got back on the bike to get warmed up again, it started bleeding and swelled up. 30 stitches were required to close up the skate cut." The Florida Panthers, Richard Zednik. On February 10th, 2008, Florida Panthers forward Richard Zednik had his throat inadvertently slit by the skate blade of falling teammate Olli Jokinen midway through the third period of a match against the Buffalo Sabers. Despite spilling 5 pints of blood, doctors performed emergency surgery and managed to save Zednik's life. He was released from the hospital 6 days later and met the press 4 days after that to share his story. Zednik missed the remainder of that season, returning the following year to earn a Masterton nomination. The LA Kings, Charlie Simmer. On March 2, 1981, Charlie Simmer of the LA Kings suffered a painful injury in a game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Simmer was checked into the boards and his leg was broken on impact. Simmer missed the rest of the season and the playoffs that year. He finished the season with 56 goals and 105 points in just 65 games played. At that time, Simmer was second to Mike Bossy in goal scoring and was having himself a career year. The Minnesota Wild, Curtis Foster. Curtis Foster of the Minnesota Wild suffered a horrible injury in a game against the San Jose Sharks on March 20th, 2008. Foster was racing to get the puck behind his own net to touch up on an icing call. Torrey Mitchell of the San Jose Sharks was just behind Foster and collided with him just after he touched the puck. Foster then crashed violently into the boards and broke his femur. He was removed from the ice, strapped to a stretcher, and needed surgery to repair the broken bone. As a result of that surgery, Foster was done for the rest of the 2007-2008 season and the playoffs. The Montreal Canadiens, Max Pacioretty. Montreal's Max Pacioretty suffered a fractured vertebrae and a severe concussion on this controversial hit by Boston Bruins captain Zdeno Chara on March 8, 2011. The gruesome aspect of this injury occurred when Pacioretty collided with the stanchion at the end of the bench. Chara was assessed a 5-minute major for boarding and a game misconduct, but no suspension was handed out by the league. Pacioretty went on to miss the remainder of the 2010-2011 season, but thankfully was able to resume his career at the start of the following season. The Nashville Predators, Matt Duchene. Matt Duchene missed 10 games at the end of the season after suffering a gruesome injury on March 26th. Teammate Dante Fabro's shot hit Duchene in the hand, severing his fingertip in his glove, which required surgery. Duchene said, "I'll be honest, it didn't hurt as bad as other injuries I've had. It just felt weird. I pulled my glove off, looked at my finger, and that's the last time I've seen it." While Duchene sustained 2 fractures in his finger and wasn't able to have the tip reattached, he was fortunate that no tendons were affected. The New Jersey Devils, Mirko Mueller. It was downright scary when New Jersey Devils defenseman Mirko Mueller went headfirst into the boards during the third period when they were facing off against the Calgary Flames. Mueller was coming down on a 2-on-1 with Travis Zajac. On the pass over, he barely got a stick on the puck, then he lost his footing. Frolik was defending on the play, and neither could stop after going full speed. The play ended with Mueller going headfirst into the boards. He was then stretchered off the ice. Mueller was then able to give a thumbs up as he was wheeled off the ice, which was a great sign for his teammates to see. We learned in the post-game show that Mueller had all feeling in his extremities, but he was going to be taken to the hospital for more testing. Luckily, he avoided any major injuries and was only labeled with a shoulder injury when it was all said and done. The New York Islanders, Rick DiPietro. The beginning of the end for Rick DiPietro came on what should have been one of his proudest moments, his first and only All-Star game. During the skills competition, he hurt his hip stretching for a Marian Gaborik shot, which is a bit ironic since the Islanders could have drafted Gaborik in the 2000 draft if they had just held on to Roberto Luongo. DiPietro toughed out this injury up until March, but then he needed hip surgery, which was his second one of his career. Prior to this All-Star game, DiPietro was a solid and occasionally above average goalie, but after it, he made 64 starts in 5 injury-plagued seasons before the Islanders bought him out. The New York Rangers, Alexei Sharapanov. In one of the saddest incidents in hockey history, New York Rangers prospect Alexei Sharapanov died during a KHL game in Russia on October 13, 2008. He was only 19 years old at the time. Sharapanov went into cardiac arrest. The ambulance that was normally at the games had already left, and the young star had to wait approximately 15 minutes before it returned and he can be rushed to the local hospital. The lack of proper medical care at the game may have been a factor in his death, although the exact cause of his collapse and passing remains in dispute. The Ottawa Senators, Erik Brannstrom. At the beginning of the 2023 NHL season, Erik Brannstrom was stretchered off the ice during a game after an unexpected hit along the boards from Islanders forward Cal Clutterbuck, who outweighs Brannstrom by 40 pounds. Brannstrom had dumped the puck in and Clutterbuck was back-checking hard, so he probably wasn't in Brannstrom's field of vision until the very last second. As the Islanders forward caught up to him, just after releasing the puck, Brannstrom had no idea the hit was coming. With his upper body briefly pinned hard into the boards, his legs remained free, flying upward with forward momentum. Brannstrom fell hard with the back of his head hitting the ice first. He was knocked out unconscious. Brannstrom suffered a concussion on the play, and at the time of making this video, he is still sidelined from this injury. The Philadelphia Flyers, Eric Lindros. This one took place during the 7th and deciding game of the 2000 Eastern Conference Final between the Devils and the Philadelphia Flyers. Scott Stevens absolutely nails Lindros, who had his head down as he crossed the New Jersey blue line. This was the second major concussion suffered and essentially ended Lindros' Flyers career and his time as an elite NHL player. Scott Stevens and the Devils went on to win that game and advance to the Stanley Cup Finals. The Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby. This was the beginning of Crosby's struggles, and while many remember the first of these checks, there were actually two contributing factors to Crosby's first NHL concussion. The first came on January 1st, 2011 at the Winter Classic between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Washington Capitals. On the play, the puck goes past Crosby. David Steckel then skates into Crosby and makes direct contact with his head. Crosby fell to the ice but got up and left under his own power. Steckel was not suspended for this play. Crosby did not miss a game, returning to the Penguins lineup 4 nights later against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But against Tampa Bay, Crosby was hit from behind by Victor Hedman, and again he struggled off the ice. This was the last game played by Crosby in the 2010-2011 season, finishing with an incredible 66 points in 41 games played. This concussion did not just keep Crosby out for the remainder of the season, but it also delayed his start to the following season. The San Jose Sharks, Joe Pavelski. Now this one has to be one of the biggest turning points in playoff history. Joe Pavelski left Game 7 between the Sharks and the Golden Knights all bloodied up. Pavelski was cross-checked by Cody Eakin after a face-off midway through the third period. He lost his balance and fell headfirst into the ice. Pavelski was wobbly as he was helped off the ice and into the dressing room. Eakin was given a 5-minute cross-checking major and 10-minute misconduct, and San Jose took full advantage. Trailing 3-0 at the time, the Sharks rallied around their fallen captain and scored 4 goals on the power play. Vegas eventually tied up the game in the dying minutes and forced overtime. However, the Sharks responded as Barclay Goodrow sent them into the second round with less than 5 minutes remaining. After this injury, Pavelski did not speak to media for 12 days, but then broke his silence, weighing in on the controversial call, saying, "Was it a 5-minute major? No, I don't think it was. Am I glad they called it that way? Heck yeah." Pavelski needed 8 staples to close that cut on the back of his head. The Seattle Kraken, Jared McCann. In the 2022-23 playoffs, the Seattle Kraken faced off against the Colorado Avalanche, and in Game 4, we saw the worst injury to ever happen in the Kraken franchise's short history. Jared McCann was hurt on a shorthanded attempt midway through the first period. The shot was saved by Avalanche goalie Alexander Georgiev and appeared to go into the netting behind the goal. McCann continued to skate into the corner and was not ready for the hit by Makar. McCann was down on the ice for several minutes before being helped off to the bench and headed straight back to the locker room. Makar was originally given a 5-minute major penalty, but it was reduced to a 2-minute minor. Seattle scored on the ensuing power play to take the 2-0 lead. Makar ended up being suspended for 1 game for this hit, and the Kraken went on to defeat the defending Stanley Cup champions. As for McCann, he returned for Game 4 of the next series against the Dallas Stars. The St. Louis Blues, Scott Perunovich. Rather than focusing on one single incident for the St. Louis Blues, let's talk about Scott Perunovich. He was touted as a big defensive prospect for the St. Louis Blues before he had the worst injury luck ever. Just since 2020, Perunovich has torn his labrum, badly fractured his wrist, and fractured his shoulder. All 3 of those injuries came with a 6-month recovery time. The reason why this is such a big deal is because the St. Louis Blues have high hopes for Perunovich. He was the first ever defenseman from the University of Minnesota Duluth to win College Hockey Rookie of the Year and Best Offensive Defenseman of the Year, averaging 0.91 points per game. On top of that, he also won the Hobey Baker Award in 2020. Thankfully, Perunovich is finally healthy, so here's to hoping he stays healthy and gets back to that point-per-game form for the St. Louis Blues. The Tampa Bay Lightning, Steven Stamkos. In 2013, Tampa Bay Lightning forward Steven Stamkos left the ice on a stretcher in the second period after colliding hard with the goalpost. Stamkos was back-checking when he got tangled with the Bruins defenseman Dougie Hamilton, and the result of this play was a broken right tibia. Stamkos tries to get up and skate twice, then he just fully gives up and lies on the ice, covering his face and clutching Tampa Bay's athletic trainer. Because of this injury, Stamkos was forced to miss the Sochi Olympics and 45 games with the Lightning. He was out for a total of 4 months. The Toronto Maple Leafs, Brian Berard. On March 11, 2000, Leafs defenseman Brian Berard was accidentally clipped in the eye by the stick of Ottawa Senator Marian Hossa. Berard suffered a retinal tear and later a detached retina, and his hockey career was disrupted. Berard had to have 7 different eye surgeries. He missed the rest of the 1999-2000 season and was forced to miss all of the following year because his vision was limited. In the 2001-2002 season, Berard returned to action with the New York Rangers and thankfully was able to play 6 more seasons in the NHL. The Vancouver Canucks, Donald Brashear. On February 21, 2000, Bruins enforcer Marty McSorley hit Vancouver tough guy Donald Brashear in the head with his stick with 3 seconds remaining left in the game. Donald Brashear hit his head on the ice and suffered a serious concussion on the play. Marty McSorley was suspended for the rest of the 1999-2000 season and never played another NHL game. He was later found guilty of criminal assault and sentenced to 18 months probation for his attack on Brashear. The Vegas Golden Knights, Brett Howden. This injury occurred in the first period of Vegas' 6-1 win over Nashville. Brett Howden crashed face first into the boards in the neutral zone after colliding with Predators' Philip Forsberg. Howden had to get stretchered off the ice, but was seen lifting his arm to acknowledge the fans and his teammates. This game was stopped for 9 minutes. Later in the game, the Golden Knights announced that Howden was in stable condition and went to the hospital for further exams. One day after the game, the Vegas Golden Knights had positive news on Brett Howden, saying he avoided any bone breaks and his injury was not career-threatening. The Washington Capitals, Chris Clark. Washington Capitals captain Chris Clark suffered a horrible injury in a game against the Boston Bruins in November of 2006 when a puck hit him right in the face. Chris Clark's palate bone was crushed by the puck and he lost his 2 front teeth. Amazingly, in hockey player fashion, Chris Clark only missed 2 games as a result of the injury before returning to action wearing a face mask. The Winnipeg Jets, Blake Wheeler. If it's for the Stanley Cup, NHL players will put everything on the line, and this play is certainly an example of that. In the final game of the Jet series against the Edmonton Oilers, Blake Wheeler blocked a shot in, well, let's call it a sensitive area during the 3rd period. The Jets went on to win the game 4-3 in triple overtime to sweep the Oilers in 4 games. After Wheeler took a shot to the groin, he had to skate off the ice and into the locker room, but he returned back on the ice for overtime. When commenting on the play after the game, Wheeler said, "I've got 3 beautiful kids and we're not having any more, so what the hell?" Thanks for watching our videos. Don't forget to leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button.